That scream made everyone in the restaurant hold their breath, and I was the target. A black waitress brings her feverish child into work, only to be fired in front of everyone. What no one knew was that a rain-soaked man in the back corner had seen everything. One cruel decision set off a moment that froze the entire room. When a billionaire rose from his seat and changed her life forever. The dinner rush always hit Maple Street Grill like a wave, loud, greasy, relentless. And tonight was no different. Plates clattered, fryers hissed, and the neon open sign flickered through the window as cold rain streaked the glass. Naomi Brooks moved through the chaos with the kind of tired grace only a single mother who had worked too many double shifts could carry. Her apron was already damp with sweat and dishwater, but she forced a smile anyway, refilling drinks and sliding plates onto tables as if she wasn't falling apart inside. Every few minutes, she slipped past the kitchen doors and ducked into the storage room at the back. It was the only place she could hide her 3-year-old son, Micah, wrapped in her jacket and curled on a pile of old linens. The daycare had closed unexpectedly after a power outage, and she hadn't had anyone else to call. She'd whispered to him to be strong for Mommy, to stay quiet, to sleep if he could. But now his forehead felt hotter each time she touched it, a deep, frightening heat. She could hear his breathing growing fast and uneven. She knew she should take him home. She also knew if she walked out now, she'd lose this job, the only thing barely keeping a roof over their heads. When she came back out, carrying 2 plates of chicken and waffles, she felt a pair of eyes follow her. In the far corner, near the window where the rain kept blowing in, sat a man who hadn't ordered anything except a cup of black coffee. His coat and shoulders were still soaked, drops sliding from his sleeves onto the booth cushion, but he didn't seem bothered. He watched the room the way someone watched a storm about to break. Naomi didn't know why, but she felt like he wasn't really there for the food. She set down the plates, thanked the customers, and turned toward the kitchen. That was when the sound hit her, soft at first, then sharper. Micah's cry. It cut through the clatter like a blade. Naomi froze. The cooks looked up. Conversations fell off. Even the rain outside seemed to hold its breath. She rushed toward the back hallway, heart pounding so loud she felt it in her throat. Her hands shook as she pushed open the swinging door, praying no one else had heard it. But Naomi wasn't fast enough to stop what came next. The cry came again, louder this time, raw and pained. Someone dropped a fork. A customer stood up. A server murmured, "What was that?" Naomi's eyes darted to the corner. The man in the wet coat was still watching her, his face unreadable too, his hands clasped loosely on the table. He blinked once, slow, intentional, like he knew exactly what that sound meant. Before Naomi could reach the storage room door, heavy footsteps stomped across the kitchen floor. Victor, the shift manager, shoved past her so hard she stumbled. "What the hell is going on back here?" he barked. Naomi felt her breath stop. She wanted to speak, to explain, to beg him not to open that door. But Victor already had his hand on the handle. Behind him, cooks stared. Dishwashers craned their necks. The dining room had gone quiet. Too quiet. Naomi could feel the weight of every pair of eyes pressing into her back, judging her, waiting for her to mess up. Micah cried again, hoarse, terrified. Victor whipped his head toward Naomi, suspicion darkening his face. "What kind of noise?" He yanked open the storage room door. The smell of fever and damp clothes drifted out. Micah lay curled on the linens, cheeks flushed deep red, tiny hands gripping Naomi's jacket as he whimpered. A sharp gasp shot through the kitchen, and in that single, suspended moment, Naomi knew whatever happened next would change everything. The neon light buzzed overhead. Rain struck the roof in frantic rhythms. The storage room felt too bright, too exposed. Somewhere behind her, she heard a chair scrape in the dining room. Someone was moving. Someone was getting up. but Naomi couldn't see who. She could only hear the rain, the low murmur rippling through the restaurant, and the soft thud of footsteps coming closer. Someone was walking toward the back hallway. Someone who had been watching her all night. Someone who wasn't supposed to be there, and Naomi felt the air shift. Who would reach the storage room first? Victor or the man in the wet coat? Victor moved first. His shoes slapped against the greasy tile as he stormed into the narrow hallway, his breath loud and angry, his shoulders rigid with suspicion. Naomi hurried behind him, her pulse thudding in her ears. She didn't want anyone else near Micah. Not while he was burning up like this. Not while she had no answers, no strength left to defend herself. She reached out, fingers brushing the back of Victor's sleeve, but he shook her off like she was an annoyance, not a human being. Behind them, the swinging kitchen door creaked open again. A slow, heavy step. The man in the wet coat. Naomi didn't have time to look back, but she felt him, felt the weight of his eyes, the steady presence behind her, the strange sense that he understood something no one else did. Victor yanked the storage room door wide, the hinge screeching in protest. The light inside flickered, revealing Micah curled in a tight ball, cheeks bright red, breath whimpering shallow and fast. Naomi pushed past Victor and scooped her son up, cradling him against her chest. His skin felt like fire. He clung to her shirt with tiny trembling hands. Victor stared at the scene as if he'd walked in on a crime. His jaw tightened, nostrils flaring. "What is this?" he demanded, throwing a sweeping accusation at the room, at Naomi, at anyone within earshot. "You brought a sick kid into my restaurant?" Naomi tried to steady her voice. "Victor, please. Daycare closed. I didn't know what to do. He's running a fever. I just needed this shift." Victor cut her off with a hard laugh, the kind that made the cooks stop chopping, the dishwashers freeze mid-scrub. "You think I care about your sob story? You think I'm running a charity back here?" His voice rose, sharp and ugly. "You put all of us at risk. You put customers at risk. You put this business at risk. What kind of mother does that?" The words sliced through her. Naomi felt them settle deep, in that wounded place she rarely let anyone see, the place shaped by years of people assuming the worst of her before she even opened her mouth. She held Micah closer. "Victor, please. He's just sick. He didn't mean—" "I don't want to hear it." Victor stepped toward her, fingers stabbing the air. "You're done, fired. Get out of my kitchen, out of my store. And if you don't move right now, I'm calling the cops for endangering public health." A sharp breath rippled through the room. One of the line cooks whispered, "Damn," under his breath. Naomi blinked, her vision blurring. She didn't even try to fight him. She didn't have the strength. And Micah was too hot in her arms, too still. She needed to get him into the rain, into the air, maybe to a clinic, anything. She tried to speak again, but her words were swallowed by the weight of humiliation pressing down on her shoulders. Then, from the hallway entrance, a calm voice came through the tension, measured, low, solid. "Is that really necessary?" The man in the wet coat stood there now, arms loose at his sides, watching Victor with a steady, almost disappointed gaze. Water dripped from the hem of his coat, leaving a small puddle near his shoes. His presence seemed to stretch, filling the narrow hallway, quieting the buzzing panic in Naomi's chest. Victor spun around. "Sir, this is none of your business." The man didn't respond, just kept that cool, unreadable stare fixed on him. Naomi noticed something strange then. Victor's bluster faltered. His breath hitched as if something about this stranger unsettled him. But the moment broke too quickly. "Out!" Victor barked again, stepping toward her aggressively. "Now!" Micah whimpered in Naomi's arms, a small, frightened sound that made her heart collapse in on itself. She turned and walked toward the exit. The diner was silent as she pushed through the swinging door and stepped back into the dining area. Customers tried to pretend they weren't watching, but they were. Every single one of them. Her face burned. The sight of the neon sign over the window blurred into streaks of yellow and pink. She clutched Micah, whispering, "It's okay, baby. Mommy's here. We're gonna be okay." But she didn't believe the words. Not tonight. Behind her, she heard Victor muttering something to the man in the wet coat. But she didn't catch the words. She didn't have the courage to look. She just kept walking, wishing she could melt into the floor. The bell over the door chimed as she stepped out into the rain. Cold drops slapped her face immediately, mixing with the tears she didn't bother to hide anymore. She shifted Micah on her shoulder and hurried down the sidewalk, shoes sliding on wet concrete. Halfway down the block, she paused under a flickering streetlight to catch her breath. Micah coughed weakly against her shoulder. His skin was burning. He needed Tylenol, maybe an ER visit. Definitely rest. She couldn't afford any of it. She closed her eyes, swallowing the panic rising in her throat. A car engine rumbled behind her. She turned slightly. A black SUV rolled slowly out of the Maple Street Grill parking lot. The headlights cut across the drizzle, glowing hazy through the mist. The SUV idled for a moment, not approaching, not leaving, just watching. Her stomach twisted. Was it him? The stranger in the wet coat? She didn't know why, but she felt the pull of his presence even from this distance. The SUV's headlights dimmed as if someone inside had leaned back from the dashboard. Then the engine sound faded. But the vehicle didn't drive off. It stayed, watching her through the rain. And Naomi couldn't tell if she should be terrified or grateful someone cared enough to stay. The rain thickened, falling in heavy silver cords as she clutched Micah to her chest and hurried toward the bus stop. Water soaked through the shoulders of her sweater, ran down her spine, pooled inside her shoes. She kept her chin tucked, shielding her son's face as best she could. His feverish skin radiated onto her collarbone, making the cold air feel even sharper. Behind her, the black SUV stayed parked at the edge of the lot, its headlights off now, just a quiet shadow in the mist. Naomi tried not to look, but her eyes kept drifting back. The figure inside was barely visible, only a silhouette behind fogged glass. She didn't know why he was there. Maybe he was just waiting for someone. Maybe he had nothing to do with her. She hoped that was true. She feared that wasn't. By the time she reached the bus stop, her breath was trembling. Micah whimpered, shifting in her arms, his forehead burning like coals. "It's okay, sweet boy," she whispered. "Mommy's right here." The bus wouldn't come for another 12 minutes. The digital display on the pole flickered uncertainly, as if even it didn't want to stay standing in this weather. Naomi leaned her back against the plexiglass shelter, letting the cold soak into her until her mind steadied enough to think. What now? Go home. Wrap Micah in blankets. Try to bring the fever down. Maybe call the clinic in the morning. But without tonight's shift, she wasn't sure she'd even have enough for the copay. She brushed a trembling hand across Micah's cheek. His skin was hotter, much hotter. The wind gusted, rattling the shelter. She blinked back tears. A sudden slam sounded behind her, the kind of sharp, angry sound that made her blood freeze. She turned in time to see the doors of Maple Street Grill burst open. Victor sprinted out, his face twisted with rage, water splashing around his expensive loafers. "Brooks!" he yelled, voice slicing through the rain. "You hear me? Don't think you're getting a paycheck for this stunt." Naomi instinctively stepped back, arms tightening around Micah. Victor closed the distance in long, stomping strides. "You're finished here," he snarled. "And if corporate hears about this little episode, you'll never work in a restaurant again. I'll make damn sure of that." Naomi's heart dropped. She hadn't fought back. She hadn't argued. She had just left quietly. And still, he followed her out here, into the rain, with more punishment ready to pour out of him. "Victor, please," she said softly. "My son is sick. I just need to get him home. You endangered customers. You endangered my whole store. You've always been a liability. Always." His voice grew harsher. "I should have fired you a month ago." Naomi felt the words hit that fragile place inside her, the one shaped by every time someone assumed she wasn't worthy, wasn't capable, wasn't enough. She swallowed hard. "You're yelling in front of my son," she whispered. "Good," Victor barked. "Let him hear what kind of mother you are." Micah whimpered again, burying his face against her neck. The world shrank to a tunnel of rain and cruelty. Then, somewhere down the block, an engine roared. The black SUV pulled from the curb slowly, like a panther stretching its limbs, and rolled toward them. Its headlights cut through the storm, washing Victor in harsh white light. He shielded his eyes. "Who the hell?" he began, but the SUV stopped directly in front of him. A door opened. A man stepped out. It was him. The stranger from the corner booth. Still in his soaked coat, still calm, still unreadable. Lightning flashed behind him, turning his silhouette into something almost cinematic. He didn't raise his voice, he didn't posture. He simply walked toward them, each step measured, deliberate, like someone used to being listened to. Victor straightened, clearly unsure how to read him. "Sir, this is a private matter." The man stopped a few feet away. The rain dripped from his hair onto the collar of his coat. His eyes were steady, dark, and impossibly calm. "It didn't look private," he said quietly. "She's standing in the rain, holding a sick child, while you shout at her." Victor blinked. "And you are?" The man tilted his head slightly, as if deciding how much to reveal. "Someone who doesn't appreciate seeing people bullied," he said. Naomi stared at him, breath caught somewhere in her chest. No one had stepped up for her like this in years, maybe ever. Victor scoffed. "Look, buddy, I run this place. This woman—" "You run it," the man repeated, voice slow, "but you don't seem to manage it." Victor's cheeks reddened. "She broke policy. She put us all at risk. She's lucky I don't—" "She's lucky," the man interrupted, "that someone saw what really happened." Victor stiffened. "And what exactly did you see?" The man's gaze shifted to Naomi, just for a moment. A tiny, thoughtful pause. She felt something in that look. Something she couldn't explain. "I saw a mother," he said simply, "doing everything she could to survive one more day." Victor opened his mouth, closed it again. For once, he had no ready insult. The rain softened for a moment, as if even the sky wanted to listen. Micah let out a soft cry. Naomi stroked his back gently, whispering, "Shh, baby, Mommy's here." The man noticed. His jaw tightened by a fraction. He took a step closer, not toward Victor, but toward Naomi. "Your son is burning up," he said quietly. She nodded, tears threatening again. "I know, I need to get him home." "Home is far?" 2 blocks. He hesitated. "In this rain?" She didn't answer. He didn't need her to. He stepped back, turning toward Victor. "We're done here." Victor bristled. "Excuse me? You don't tell me what—" But the man had already turned and opened the back door of his SUV. Naomi blinked. "Wait, what are you—" "Get in," he said gently. "Let me drive you home." And though she barely knew him, though she had every reason to be afraid, Naomi felt the strangest thing wash through her. Trust. Thin, trembling, but real. She looked at Micah, then the man, then the endless rain, and she stepped toward the SUV. Behind her, Victor shouted something she didn't hear, because the door closed, muffling the storm, muffling the hatred. muffling everything except the soft hum of the engine and the warmth beginning to creep back into her frozen fingers. As the SUV pulled onto the road, Naomi held her son close, breathing him in, feeling the warmth of the heater on her cheeks. But her eyes drifted to the man driving. Who was he? Why did he help her? Why did he look at her with that strange mixture of sorrow and recognition? The street lamps blurred past the windows. Something in her whispered that tonight wasn't the end of her story. It was the beginning. The wipers brushed rain across the windshield in slow, rhythmic arcs as the SUV turned down the narrow side street lined with rundown apartment buildings. The heater hummed softly, filling the car with warm air that finally eased the shaking in Naomi's hands. Micah slept against her shoulder now, his breath shallow but steadier. Tiny curls stuck to his damp forehead. Streetlights flickered overhead, casting pale gold reflections across puddles. The whole world felt quiet inside the vehicle, like the storm outside was happening to someone else. Naomi watched the man driving, studying the profile she hadn't allowed herself to look at earlier. His jaw was strong, edged with a day's stubble. His coat collar was still damp, raindrops glistening on the dark wool. He drove with calm certainty, hands steady, eyes forward, the kind of composure that didn't come from luck but from a life used to responsibility. He didn't speak for a long time, and neither did she. The silence wasn't uncomfortable, just fragile. At last he glanced at her briefly. "He needs rest," he murmured. "I know," she said softly. "Thank you. For stopping, for—" her voice faltered. "For helping." He nodded once, as if accepting the words but not needing them. Children shouldn't be out in weather like this. A beat passed. Mothers shouldn't either. The words cut deeper than he knew. They turned another corner. Naomi's building came into view, a small, peeling three-story place with a sagging awning and a broken porch light that buzzed like a dying insect. She felt heat rise to her cheeks. She wasn't ashamed of being poor, but tonight she wished the place didn't look quite so defeated. The SUV rolled to a stop. He put it in park but didn't unlock the doors yet. "You sure you'll be okay in there?" he asked quietly. Naomi hesitated. The truth hovered on her tongue, heavy and bitter. "I'm never okay. I'm just surviving." But she swallowed it down. People didn't want honesty like that. They wanted reassurance. "We'll be fine," she whispered. He searched her face. "If his fever gets worse, take him to the ER." Her stomach tightened. She nodded, but the fear must have shown anyway. The man didn't push further. He simply stepped out of the SUV and walked around to open her door. Rain rushed in again, cold and sharp. He shielded them with his coat as they stepped out. The gesture instinctive and strangely protective. They walked to the building entrance. The hallway lights flickered. Somewhere inside, a neighbor argued loudly with someone over the phone. Naomi clutched Micah, shifting his weight, praying he wouldn't wake. At her apartment door, she fumbled for her keys. Her hands were shaking too much. The man gently reached forward. "Here," he said. "Let me." He steadied her hand, guiding the key toward the lock. The contact was brief, barely more than a touch, but Naomi felt something warm pass through her, something that made her throat tighten. The door creaked open. Her apartment waited in the darkness. A single orange glow from a street lamp filtered through the blinds. The room was cold, the air stagnant. It wasn't much. It wasn't enough. But it was all she had. She turned to thank him one more time. He was studying the doorway, the cracked walls, the sagging couch, the faint smell of damp from the broken radiator. His expression wasn't pity. She would have hated that. It was something quieter. A deep, quiet sadness that felt almost like recognition. "I didn't catch your name," he said. She shifted Micah in her arms. Naomi, she said softly. Naomi Brooks. His eyes softened. I'm Elias. Just that. No last name. No explanation. Just Elias. She exhaled, bracing herself for the cold inside her apartment. Thank you, Elias. Really. He nodded. Get some rest. Then, almost reluctantly, he stepped back. Good night, Naomi. She closed the door gently after he left, the click echoing in the stillness. Naomi flipped the light switch. The bulb buzzed awake. The small living room looked the same as always. An old couch, a pile of laundry she hadn't folded, a stack of bills on the table, a heater that refused to turn on unless kicked twice. But something felt different tonight. Not the room, her. She tucked Micah into his tiny bed in the corner. He whimpered once but settled quickly, cheeks still warm, curls stuck to his temples. She kissed his forehead and smoothed his blanket. Then she sank onto the couch and buried her face in her hands. Everything had happened too fast. Being fired, humiliated, threatened, then suddenly protected by a stranger who appeared out of nowhere. A stranger who looked at her like she mattered. A stranger who drove a car she could never afford, spoke with a calm authority she couldn't understand, moved with the quiet assurance of someone used to being obeyed. Who are you, Elias? Why were you watching me? What did you see? Thunder rumbled outside. She shivered and grabbed the thin blanket on the couch, wrapping it around her shoulders. She checked on Micah again. His breathing was steadier now, thank God. She rested her head against the back of the couch. Tired. Cold. Lost. But not alone. Not anymore. Someone had stepped into her storm tonight. She couldn't explain why, but she felt it down to her bones. He wasn't done. Naomi closed her eyes for a moment, letting exhaustion pull her under. Outside, rain continued to fall. Tires splashed softly as a vehicle pulled away from the curb, slowly, quietly, like someone making sure she was truly safe before leaving. And miles away, in a tall glass building glowing over downtown Cleveland, a corporate security camera uploaded fresh footage to a private server. The footage showed a soaked man in a heavy coat, sitting in a corner booth, watching everything, seeing everything. And his name on the account was one that would soon shatter Naomi's entire world. Elias Carter, the CEO, the owner, the man who had seen her fall, and the one who was about to decide her fate. Long after the SUV disappeared around the corner, Naomi sat alone in the dim light of her apartment, listening to the rain thrum against the window like a heartbeat she couldn't steady. She wrapped the thin blanket tighter around her shoulders and let her eyes drift toward Micah's little bed in the corner. His fevered breaths rose and fell softly now, steadier than before. The worst of the trembling had eased. But inside her chest, the trembling hadn't stopped. She stood, moving quietly around the apartment, careful not to wake him. The weak bulb in the kitchen buzzed with a low hum, casting a pale yellow halo over the chipped countertop. Naomi opened the cabinet where she kept her medicine box, a battered plastic container with corners that no longer closed properly. She rummaged through it, hoping for one more packet of Tylenol. Nothing. Just an empty blister pack and a crumpled tube of ointment she couldn't remember buying. She closed her eyes. Just 2 tablets could have brought his fever down. 2. Her throat tightened. She crossed the room and pulled the stack of unopened envelopes from the table. They were stiff with accumulated rainfall from when they'd been shoved through the broken mail slot. She tossed them onto the couch, but the top one fell open on its own, revealing bold black type. Final notice. The second letter, overdue. The third, immediate payment required. She sank onto the sagging couch cushion, the springs groaning beneath her. She held the envelopes in her hands, smoothing their wrinkled edges with her thumb. An old habit, one she did whenever she didn't want to cry. Not tonight, she whispered to herself. Don't fall apart tonight. But her voice cracked anyway. She pressed her palms to her eyes, willing the tears to retreat. She had learned long ago that the world rarely made space for a black woman's tears. They were expected to be strong, unbreakable, made of iron and fire. But tonight, she felt like damp paper, thin, fragile, ready to tear at the slightest touch. Her phone lit up with a dim glow. A text from her landlord. Rent due tomorrow. No exceptions, Naomi. I can't keep letting this slide. She shut the screen off. She didn't have the energy to answer. Instead, she rose and walked to the window. She pressed her fingers against the cold glass, tracing the path the raindrops made as they streaked downward. In the reflection, she saw a woman who looked older than 28. Eyes tired, jaw set hard from too many battles she hadn't chosen. She whispered, "You did the best you could." But even she didn't believe it. When she turned away from the window, her gaze fell on a small wooden picture frame sitting crooked on a shelf. A photo of Micah at age 2, smiling so wide she could practically hear his laugh. Next to it, another picture. One she kept turned slightly away because it still hurt to look at. Her late husband, Jordan. The man with the warmest smile she had ever known. The one who told her she could be anything. That she deserved the world even when she barely believed she deserved a quiet place to sleep. The one who died in a construction accident barely a week before Micah's first birthday. Her breath caught. Jordan, I hope you're watching over our boy. Tonight was rough. She brushed her fingers across the edge of the frame, and for a moment, she let herself imagine what he would have said. You're stronger than this. Keep going, Nay. A sudden cough from Micah's bed snapped her out of her thoughts. She hurried over, touched his forehead again, still hot, but not climbing higher. Relief loosened her chest. She grabbed the last washcloth she had, soaked it under cold tap water, and laid it gently on his forehead. He whimpered, then relaxed. Mommy's here, she whispered. She stayed by his side until his breathing deepened again. Finally, she stood and walked back to the table. She picked up the envelope with final notice stamped across it in heavy red ink. When she flipped it over, another envelope slid out from underneath. This one wasn't a bill. This one was a pay stub. The one she should have picked up tonight, before Victor chased her out like she was trash. Her stomach twisted. Her last paycheck. She needed it. She needed every dollar. But if Victor refused to release it, she didn't know what she would do. She stared at the papers piled across the table. The dim light flickered. Something inside her, the hope, the endurance, the tiny flame that got her through every day, seemed to flicker too. Then, 3 soft knocks interrupted the silence. Naomi stiffened. No one knocked on her door at this hour. No neighbors visited. No friends came by. The building was always too loud or too quiet, but never welcoming. Her breath stilled. The knocks came again. Gentler this time. Naomi? A voice called through the door. Low, warm, familiar. Her heart jumped. Elias. She hurried toward the door, pausing only to peek through the peephole. His silhouette stood beneath the flickering hallway light, coat still damp, hands tucked into his pockets like he didn't want to intrude. She opened the door a crack. Elias? Did you forget something? He shook his head. I just wanted to make sure your son was okay. The simple kindness of that sentence nearly undid her. He's asleep now, she whispered. Still warm, but better. Elias nodded. Good. For a moment, They just stood there. Two people from two entirely different worlds, sharing the same silence. Then Elias lifted a small white bag. "I brought some children's Tylenol and a thermometer," he said, "just in case you need it before morning." Her breath hitched. I can't take that." "You can," he replied softly. "And you should." She opened the door wider, letting the faint warmth from inside spill into the hallway. "Thank you." He handed her the bag, but his eyes scanned her face like he was searching for cracks in her strength, and she felt him see every one of them. "Get some rest, Naomi," he said, and he turned to leave. But before he walked far, he stopped, looked back. His expression shifted, some mix of resolve and something deeper. "Tomorrow," Elias said quietly, "things are going to change." Naomi's breath caught in her throat. "What do you mean?" she whispered. But Elias simply gave her a small, unreadable nod, then walked down the dim hallway, footsteps echoing softly. And though she didn't understand why, Naomi felt the air shift again, just like it had back in the diner, just like it had when her life first cracked open. She closed the door slowly, heart beating faster. Tomorrow. Something was coming, something big, something she couldn't name, and she wasn't sure whether to fear it or hope for it. Morning crept into the apartment slowly, leaking in through the blinds in strips of dull winter light. Naomi woke on the couch, her neck stiff, her back aching. The thin blanket had slipped to the floor. For a few seconds she lay still, listening to Micah's breathing. It was calmer now, soft even. She rose quietly and checked his forehead, warm but no longer burning. Relief loosened something tight in her chest. But the moment didn't last. Her eyes drifted toward the envelope on the table, her unread bills, and reality came roaring back with a weight that almost knocked the breath from her. Rent was still due. Her paycheck was still locked behind Victor's cruelty, and she had no job. She stood in the kitchen, staring at the cracked tile under her feet. The world outside was gray, cold, unforgiving. A city waking up to the grind, just like she used to. A knock on her door made her jump. She froze. Another knock. But this one wasn't hesitant like Elias's had been the night before. It was sharp, official. She cracked the door open. Mr. Polk, her landlord, stood in the hallway, arms folded, a rent ledger under one arm. His gray hair was slicked back, his glasses perched low on his nose. He didn't bother with small talk. "Morning, Naomi," he said. "It's the first of the month." Her throat tightened. I know, I just need a little time. I'm expecting a check from—" "No more extensions," he said firmly. "I'm sorry. You're a good tenant. But the building's been inspected twice this month, and I can't afford any missed payments. Rent by the end of the day, or we'll need to talk about moving arrangements." Moving arrangements. A polite way to say eviction. Naomi nodded stiffly, unable to find her voice. He sighed, stepped back, and left. The door clicked shut. She stood there for a long moment, her forehead pressed to the wood, her breath shaky. She felt the old ache rise, the ache of someone on the edge, stretched so thin she might snap. She brushed away tears impatiently. She needed strength, not sorrow. She needed her paycheck. She needed Victor to let her back in that building long enough to grab it. She dressed quickly, wrapped Micah in his warmest coat, and held him close as she stepped outside. The wind cut sharp through the streets. She walked quickly, head down, boots splashing through half-frozen puddles. By the time she reached Maple Street Grill, the sun had barely lifted above the rooftops. The restaurant lights were on. The staff was filtering in. Victor's car was already parked crookedly in his usual space. Naomi paused at the door, holding Micah against her hip. Her hands trembled, but she pushed inside anyway. The rush of warm air hit her like a slap. The moment she stepped in, heads turned. Jade glanced up from wiping tables. A line cook paused mid-sentence. A dishwasher pushing a cart froze in the middle of the kitchen doors. Their expressions varied: curiosity, pity, annoyance, but none of them stepped forward. Then Victor appeared from the back, coffee in hand, jaw already tight. "You have got to be kidding me," he snapped. "Brooks, what are you doing here?" Naomi swallowed hard. "I just need my paycheck. That's all." "You're not getting anything," he said with a smug shrug. "Payroll's locked. Corporate doesn't authorize releases once someone's been terminated. Go home." "I need it," she whispered. "Please, Victor. My son—" "I don't care," he spat. "You lost the job. You lost the check. That's how it works." The humiliation hit her again, sharper than last night. Micah whimpered softly and tightened his arms around her neck. Victor rolled his eyes. "Oh, great. You brought the kid again? Victor, please." "I said no," he barked. His voice boomed across the restaurant. "You step 1 foot behind that counter and I'm calling the police." The room went silent. Even Jade flinched. Naomi's heart hammered against her ribs. She felt cornered, trapped, stripped of dignity. She opened her mouth to beg again, but a voice behind her spoke first. "I'd advise against that, Victor." The air shifted. Slowly, Naomi turned. Elias Carter stood just inside the doorway. No heavy coat this time. No rainwater dripping from his sleeves. Just a pressed charcoal suit, dark tie, polished shoes, and a presence that filled the entire space. The diner fell so quiet she could hear the hum of the refrigerator behind the counter. Victor blinked. "What?" Elias walked forward calmly, his gaze cutting through the tension like a blade. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't puff up his chest. He didn't need to. "I understand," Elias said, "that a former employee is trying to collect her final paycheck." Victor wiped his palms on his slacks. "Sir, this isn't official business." "Everything in my restaurants is official business," Elias said softly, every word deliberate. Victor's face went pale. Whispers rippled through the staff. Jade's eyes widened. The line cooks murmured, "Is that—" Elias turned to Naomi, and for the first time, she saw him not as the stranger in the rain, but as someone used to making decisions that shaped lives. "Naomi," he said gently, "you should have called me. I didn't want to cause trouble," she whispered. His expression flickered. Sadness. Maybe even guilt. Then he faced Victor. "You chased her into the street last night. You shouted at her. You threatened her paycheck. And now you're telling her she can't collect wages she has rightfully earned." Victor stammered. "She violated policy." "Did she?" Elias asked calmly. "Or did she simply need help you refused to offer?" Victor froze. Elias stepped closer, voice low but deadly precise. "I have a zero-tolerance policy," he said, "for cruelty, for abuse of authority, for managers who forget what leadership actually means." Victor's throat bobbed. Sir, I didn't know." "No," Elias said softly. "You didn't." He glanced at the staff, then back at Victor. "You're done here." The words dropped like a stone in a still pond. The room inhaled as one. "You're fired," Elias finished. "Effective immediately." Victor's mouth fell open. You can't do this." "Can't I?" Elias asked. And then for the first time he gave his full title. "I'm Elias Carter," he said, "founder and CEO of the Carter Dining Group." A gasp shot through the restaurant. Jade covered her mouth. A dishwasher nearly dropped his tray. Victor staggered back a step, face draining of color. Elias didn't blink. "And you," he said coldly, "no longer represent this company." Silence swallowed the entire room. Then Elias turned slowly to Naomi. "Let's get you that paycheck," he said softly. Her knees nearly buckled. Micah stirred against her shoulder, and she held him tighter, because at that moment, Naomi Brooks realized something she'd never dared to believe. Someone finally saw her, and everything she had been fighting to hold together was about to change. For a moment, the entire restaurant stood frozen. Staff, customers, even the humming appliances behind the counter. Every eye in the building was fixed on Naomi and the man who had just shattered the morning like a glass plate dropped on tile. Elias Carter, founder, CEO. The man whose name sat on every sign, every apron, every menu in the Carter dining group. And he wasn't just here. He was standing for her. Victor finally found his voice, though it wavered like a loose shutter in a storm. "Mr. Carter, this is a misunderstanding. She hit a child in the storage room. She broke health policy. She was desperate," Elias said gently, almost too quiet for the room to hear. "And you punished her for it." A soft murmur rippled through the staff. Jade shifted uncomfortably, her eyes darting between Victor and Naomi. Victor swallowed hard. "Sir, you don't understand." "No," Elias said, stepping forward. "You don't understand. You don't understand leadership. You don't understand responsibility. And you don't understand compassion." The words hit Victor like slaps, not violent, not loud, but sharp enough to sting the ego of a man who had built his entire identity on power over the powerless. Elias turned slightly. "Naomi, please follow me." Her legs felt weak. She nodded and adjusted Micah's weight on her hip. He whined softly, still sleepy, still warm. She kissed his forehead and whispered, "It's okay, baby. Mommy's right here." The path to the office felt longer than usual. As if the hallway had grown with her fear and uncertainty. Every footstep echoed. Every breath seemed too loud. She could feel the stairs behind her, whispers brushing the back of her neck like cold wind. Inside the small office, Elias closed the door behind them. The fluorescent light buzzed overhead, its harsh glow falling across boxes of inventory sheets, an old computer monitor, and the crooked picture frames Victor had hung without care. Elias gestured toward the only chair. "Please," he said. "Sit. Let me help you with him." Naomi hesitated, then allowed him to gently lift Micah from her arms. The tenderness with which he held her son startled her. He supported Micah's head, kept his body angled against his chest like he'd done it 1,000 times. It was something she hadn't seen since Jordan died. The memory hit her unexpectedly, and her eyes stung. Elias sat in the second chair with Micah resting safely in his arms. "He's still warm," he noted quietly. "Not dangerously so. The fever's coming down." "Thank God," she whispered. He nodded. "Now, about yesterday." Naomi braced herself. "I'm sorry," Elias said simply. "I should have stepped in sooner. I should have stopped Victor the moment he screamed at you. I shouldn't have let you walk out that door in the rain." Her heart fluttered with disbelief. "You don't owe me an apology." "I do," he said. "I watched you struggle, and I saw myself in that struggle. I won't ignore something like that." Her breath caught. That quiet emotion she sensed last night flickered again in his eyes, a kind of recognition, something shaped by old wounds. "You came back for your paycheck," Elias continued. "You're entitled to it, and you'll get it today." Tears pricked her eyelids. "Thank you." "I'm not done," he added gently. She looked up. "I've seen employees like you before, Naomi. People who carry more than their share. People who give more than they get. People who hold entire families together with their bare hands." Her throat tightened. "And people like that," he said softly, "shouldn't be punished for needing help." She clenched her hands in her lap. I didn't mean to break the rules. I just had nowhere else to take him. I didn't want to lose the shift. I know. His voice softened. And you shouldn't have had to choose. She blinked back tears. Victor said, he said I'd never work in a restaurant again. Elias shook his head slowly. Victor is no longer an authority here. And you, he paused, choosing his words carefully. You're not losing your job. Her breath hitched. What? You're not fired, he repeated firmly. You're being offered a chance, a new role, more stable hours, more pay. A structured path upward, if you want it. She stared at him, stunned. I don't understand. You will, he said softly. But first, your son's health and your stability. He reached into his coat pocket and placed a card on the desk. It was thick, embossed, far too elegant for this cramped office. This is the contact for our employee support program, medical copay assistance, childcare vouchers, emergency funds, all confidential. Her hands trembled as she picked it up. I don't know what to say, she whispered. You don't need to say anything, he replied. Not today. He handed Micah back to her, the child stirring gently at the movement. Naomi held her son, face buried in his curls, and let one tear slip free. Just one. Then she inhaled slowly and lifted her head. Elias watched her with that same calm concentration, as if she were the single most important detail in the room. Come back tomorrow morning, he said. We'll talk about your future here. Her breath faltered. My future? He gave a small, quiet smile. You deserve one. A soft knock sounded at the door. Jade peeked in, eyes wide with shock and something else, something softer, almost guilty. Mr. Carter? Sorry to interrupt, but corporate is calling. They need you. I'll be right there, Elias said, without looking away from Naomi. Jade lingered an extra second, stealing a glance at Naomi, an expression she couldn't quite read, before slipping back into the hallway. Elias stood, smoothing the front of his suit coat. Naomi, things are going to change. I promise you that. She nodded, heart pounding. As he opened the door to leave, the noise of the dining room drifted in. Hushed voices, disbelief, whispers of, he fired Victor. And, did you see him talk to her? But Elias paused before stepping through. He turned back, eyes steady, voice warm. You're stronger than you think, he said quietly. Don't forget that. Then he left. And for the first time in years, Naomi felt something unfamiliar settling into her chest. Hope. It sat there, like a small, trembling bird she was afraid to touch, afraid to scare away. But it stayed. It fluttered. It breathed. She carried Micah out of the office, still stunned, still light-headed from everything Elias had said. The world outside the door felt different, brighter somehow, even though nothing in the restaurant had changed. The same customers, the same clatter of dishes, the same scent of coffee and grilled onions floating through the air. But to her, all of it felt softer. She could feel eyes on her, some curious, some sympathetic, some unsure of what exactly had just happened behind that office door. Jade lingered near the drink station, pretending to wipe the counter, even though she'd wiped it twice already. When Naomi passed, Jade's whisper slipped out almost reluctantly. Hey, I'm glad your little boy's okay. Naomi blinked, surprised. Thank you. It wasn't much, but it was something. She took that small kindness as a sign of the shift that had begun. The next morning, she stood outside Maple Street Grill again. But this time she wasn't drenched. She wasn't shaking. She wasn't carrying humiliation like a weight on her shoulders. She held Micah's hand as he chewed on a small pack of crackers. His fever had dropped overnight. She'd given him a warm bath, held him until he fell asleep, and whispered prayers over him the way her grandmother used to whisper over her. He looked better. She felt better. She stepped inside. Elias was already there. Not the polished CEO in a sleek coat like yesterday, but in a navy sweater, sleeves pushed up, hair still damp from a morning shower. He clearly didn't have time to finish. He held a tablet under one arm and a travel mug of coffee in his other hand. And when he saw her, he smiled. Not a CEO smile. Not a corporate smile. A real one. "I'm glad you came," he said. She swallowed. "You told me to." "Yes," he said gently. "But I wanted you to want to." Her throat tightened. He motioned for her to follow him, and she did, past the curious stairs, past the kitchen doors, into the same office that had once felt too small to hold her fear. Now it felt too small to hold everything she was feeling. Elias opened a folder on the desk. "Naomi, I want to be clear. Yesterday wasn't about pity. It wasn't charity. I don't offer opportunities lightly. I've been observing you for weeks. How you treat customers, how you keep your cool during rushes, how you don't let rudeness break you." She bit her lip. "Sometimes it almost does." "And yet you stay kind," he said. "That matters, more than you know." He slid a single sheet of paper toward her. An offer letter. Assistant manager. Full benefits. Predictable schedule. Childcare stipend. It was everything she had needed and never expected to have. Her vision blurred with tears she fought to keep back. "Mr. Carter, I don't think I'm qualified. I barely have time to sleep. I have a kid. I'm not polished. I don't have business experience. I don't know spreadsheets or schedules or, you know people," he said simply. "You know how to be decent, even when no one is decent back. That's harder to teach than any spreadsheet." She looked down at the offer, fingers trembling on the paper. "Why me?" she whispered. Elias leaned back slightly, exhaling as if recalling a memory. "When I was Micah's age," he said, "my mom worked nights, 3 jobs. I spent a lot of time in the back rooms of stores and restaurants. People weren't always kind." Her heart tightened at the familiarity. "She used to say," he continued, "one day, Eli, someone's gonna see you for who you are, not for what you lack." He looked at her with a softness that made her breath catch. "And I see you, Naomi." A tear escaped despite her trying to blink it away. She wiped it quickly and managed a shaky laugh. "I'm sorry. I don't usually cry at work." "You're not at work yet," he said gently. "Not until you sign that paper." She let out a breath that trembled at the end. "Okay," she whispered, and she signed. Her name looked different written like that, steady, hopeful, intentional. Elias didn't congratulate her with a handshake like most bosses would. Instead, he nodded with quiet pride, as though he knew the weight of this moment. "As of today," he said, "you're assistant manager of Maple Street Grill. I'll oversee your training personally." Her eyes widened. "Personally? Why?" His answer was simple. "Because you deserve someone who doesn't underestimate you." The rest of the morning was a blur of new responsibilities. Learning the system, understanding inventory, shadowing supervisors, checking prep lists. She made mistakes. She got flustered. She accidentally spilled a tray of silverware that scattered across the floor with a loud clatter. Jade rushed over to help her pick it up. For a moment, their eyes met. Something unspoken passed between them. Guilt from one side, forgiveness from the other. Naomi nodded softly. Jade nodded back. The shift had begun. At noon, Naomi ducked into the break room to call the childcare hotline Elias had written on the card. Her fingers trembled as she dialed. "Carter Support Network," a warm voice answered. "How can we help you today?" It took Naomi 3 tries to get her name out without her voice cracking. By the time she returned to the dining room, her heart felt lighter than it had in years, and when she stepped back into the restaurant, she caught sight of Elias standing near the counter, speaking quietly with a staff member. But he looked up, just for a second, and his eyes found hers. Just a glance, but something in it felt like a promise. Not romantic, not dramatic, just human. Someone believed in her, and that was enough to steady her for the road ahead. Because a new chapter had begun, and for the first time in a long time, Naomi wasn't walking it alone. But the moment hope takes root, something always rises to test it. That something was Jade. The shift after Naomi signed her new position felt strangely quiet, not around her, but around Jade, like the air tightened whenever the 2 women crossed paths. Jade kept glancing over her shoulder, her jaw tense, eyes darting with something sharper than simple jealousy. By noon, everyone knew Naomi had been promoted. Even staff from the morning shift texted in, half congratulating, half confused, some outright shocked. Maple Street Grill was a small place. News didn't just travel, it sprinted. Jade stood near the register, arms crossed, watching Naomi train with the supervisor. Her stare wasn't hateful, just full of a hurt pride that had festered too long. Naomi felt it, the way one feels a storm before the first drop of rain hits. And still, she chose kindness. "Jade," Naomi said softly during a lull, "if you ever want to talk." "I'm good," Jade cut in too quickly. Naomi nodded, not pushing. She knew what it was like to be wounded and not ready to show the scar. Later that afternoon, while Naomi was learning how to input inventory into the computer system, she didn't realize Jade had slipped into the hallway behind her. The older waitress leaned against the wall, phone slowly rising in her hand as she recorded a short video. Naomi signing forms at the desk, the assistant manager nameplate visible in the corner of the shot. "She really thinks she's something," Jade muttered under her breath. She stopped the recording and tapped her screen twice, ready to upload it to a private group chat where she often shared gossip, maybe even to her public social page if the attention looked promising. But something made her pause. A hiss came from the kitchen. A sharp smell of burning oil hit the air. Someone shouted from inside, "Watch it! The fryer's acting weird!" Everyone turned toward the noise. Everyone except Naomi, who recognized that tone instantly. It was fear. She broke into a run. The kitchen was already in chaos. A line cook had accidentally bumped a pan, causing hot oil to slosh dangerously over the side. Jade was the closest. Right beside the prep table the oil was about to spill onto. Naomi didn't think. She didn't weigh her options. She didn't look for a safe way in. She simply moved. She grabbed Jade by the arm and yanked her backward just as a splash of boiling oil hit the floor where Jade had been standing. The sound of it smacking the tiles was loud enough to jolt the entire kitchen into stillness. For a few seconds, no one breathed. Then Jade looked at Naomi, really looked at her shaking hands, at her wide eyes, at the burn that had narrowly missed her leg because of Naomi's quick grip. You pulled me out of that," Jade whispered, disbelief cracking her voice. Naomi swallowed, still catching her breath. "Of course I did." "Why?" Jade blurted. "We're not friends." Naomi offered a tired, gentle smile. "Because you're human, and you were in danger. That's enough." Those words hit Jade deeper than she expected. Something flickered in her expression. Guilt, gratitude, confusion, maybe all 3. The kitchen manager rushed over. "Good catch, Naomi. That could have been bad." Naomi nodded, stepping back, trying not to make the moment any bigger than it already felt. But Jade didn't step back. She just stood there, staring at Naomi like she was seeing her for the first time. As Naomi walked out of the kitchen, she didn't see Jade slip her phone back into her apron pocket. Screen dark, the video unsent. She also didn't see Jade wipe her eyes with the back of her hand before following her out. That evening, Naomi was organizing the walk-in cooler inventory when she heard footsteps behind her. Slow, hesitant, she turned. Jade stood there, wringing her hands, as if unsure what to do with them now that they weren't holding her phone like a weapon. "Naomi," she said softly, "I need to tell you something." Naomi waited, patient. "I was going to post something ugly about you today." Jade swallowed hard. "A video. The moment you signed the assistant manager papers." Naomi exhaled quietly. Not surprised, not angry, just sad. Jade pressed on. "I thought you were getting the promotion because you kissed up to the new owner, or because he felt sorry for you, or because," she winced, "because of the kid." Micah. The sting hit Naomi, but she didn't let it show. "But when you grabbed me today," Jade whispered, voice breaking, "I realized something. You didn't hesitate. You didn't think about who I'd been to you. You just helped." Naomi said softly, "That's what people do when others are in danger." "Not everyone," Jade countered. "Not me. Not yesterday." She reached into her pocket and held up her phone. "I deleted the video. And I'm done talking behind your back. You deserve this job. You earned it. And I was wrong." Naomi's voice warmed. "Thank you, Jade. That means more than you think." For the first time since Naomi met her, Jade smiled. A real one. Small and fragile, but real. "You know," Jade said, clearing her throat, "I've been here 8 years, and no one ever pulled me out of hot oil before, literally or metaphorically." Naomi laughed gently. "Well, I'm here now." "Yeah," Jade said, eyes softening. "You are." When Naomi stepped outside for her break, the sun was beginning to set. A soft pink glow spread across the sky, painting Maple Street in warm colors she hadn't felt in years. She leaned against the wall, inhaling the cool evening air. Her phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. She tapped it. "Checking in on you?" "EC." She smiled. Before she could reply, another message appeared. "You did good today." She exhaled slowly, heart lifting. As much as her world had darkened in the past weeks, something was shifting now. People were seeing her. People were changing because of her. And tomorrow, things would shift even more. Because Elias had called for an all-staff meeting, and no one, not Naomi, not Jade, not even Victor lurking in the shadows, knew what he planned to announce. Only that it would change everything. The morning of the meeting, Naomi woke before her alarm. The apartment was still dim, the early light of Maple Street barely spilling through the thin curtains. Micah slept curled beside her, his small hand resting on her arm. His breathing was soft, steady. No fever, no coughing. She brushed a kiss across his forehead and whispered, "We made it another day, baby." She dressed quietly, smoothing her uniform, tying her apron, pinning her curls back. There was something different in her movements today. Not the frantic energy she'd lived on for months, but something steadier. A rhythm that came not from fear, but from purpose. The cold morning air hugged her as she stepped outside, the sun rising low behind the rooftops. The street was waking up, delivery trucks humming past, kids on bikes heading to school, a man sweeping the sidewalk in front of the barber shop. Naomi breathed it all in. She was still tired, still juggling bills, still unsure of what the future held. But for the first time in years, she didn't feel alone in her struggle. Inside Maple Street Grill, the world was already buzzing. Cook stations heating up, pans clattering, silverware clinking in bins. The smell of fresh biscuits drifted from the kitchen, mixing with coffee and sizzling bacon. Naomi glanced at the whiteboard schedule. Her name was written beside Assistant Manager, Training. The letters were straight, neatly printed. Someone had drawn a tiny star next to it. When she turned, Jade was leaning against the counter with 2 coffees in hand. "One of these is yours," Jade said, holding one out. Naomi blinked. "For me?" "No, for the ghost behind you. Yes, for you." Jade rolled her eyes, then softened. "You saved my life. The least I can do is save your caffeine level." Naomi laughed. "Thank you." They shared a small moment, awkward, new, but honest. It felt like the beginning of a real friendship, one Naomi didn't realize she'd been missing. Training filled most of the morning. Naomi stood beside the shift supervisor while learning how to break down sales reports and track shifts. She watched kitchen operations from a new vantage point, seeing the flow of the room, the small inefficiencies, the moments when staff needed encouragement. She was everywhere at once, helping a new server learn the POS system, stepping in when a customer complained their eggs were overcooked, calming a dishwasher who panicked when a stack of plates nearly toppled, checking on kitchen prep, watching for anything unsafe since yesterday's oil scare. And all the while she felt Elias's eyes on her, not in a way that unnerved her, in a way that made her feel seen. He moved quietly between tasks, observing from a distance. His presence was steady, calm, the kind of leadership people responded to without him raising his voice. Once, when the lunch rush got intense, Naomi glanced toward him. Elias nodded once, silent reassurance. "You're doing fine." And for some reason, those 3 unspoken words steadied her hands. By late afternoon, Naomi was exhausted but energized. Her clothes smelled like coffee and grilled onions. Her apron smudged with flour from helping the baking station. Her feet ached, but she couldn't stop smiling. Micah's daycare sent a message. "He ate well today and took a long nap." That alone could have carried her through the rest of the week. But something else happened that made the day even brighter. A woman at table 4 accidentally dropped a whole tray of drinks. Glass shattered, ice scattered across the floor. The server attending the table froze, mortified. Before anyone else could react, Naomi was there with towels, a broom, and a reassuring voice. "It's just water and glass," she said gently. "No one's hurt. We're good." She helped the young server regain her composure, turning a moment of panic into something manageable. Customers around them watched, some with surprised looks. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't heroic. It was just human. But that was Naomi. Steady when life wasn't. Elias had seen it too. She noticed him watching from across the room, his expression unreadable but warm. As she walked back toward the kitchen, he murmured, "Beautiful work." Naomi flushed. "It's just what needed to be done." "That," Elias replied softly, "is exactly why it was beautiful." 30 days passed in that rhythm. Growth, learning, soft moments, hard ones too, but all of it shaping someone stronger than she'd ever allowed herself to be. Her inventory reports became precise. Her communication skills sharpened. Her confidence rose. Even the staff treated her differently, because she treated them differently. She encouraged them, guided them, lifted them up when they doubted themselves. The quiet respect she showed everyone returned to her in small ways. Cooked meals left at her station. Sticky notes of encouragement on the cooler door. People asking for her help because they trusted her, not because they needed her. And Micah, sweet Micah, grew stronger. His cheeks gained their color back. His little laugh became more frequent. He loved the new routine at daycare, bringing home drawings of stick figures that always included Naomi and a big, sunny sky. Some nights, Naomi sat on the floor with him and just watched his tiny hand scribble colors on the paper, overwhelmed by how close she'd come to losing everything. But she also felt something new rising. A belief that maybe, just maybe, life was not finished giving her chances. And then, just when things felt almost steady, Elias called for the staff meeting. "Tomorrow morning," he said, standing in the doorway of the kitchen. "Everyone, mandatory." The room froze. The grill hissed. Someone dropped a spatula. "Mandatory?" Jade whispered. "Oh, that's never casual." Naomi felt her stomach twist. Not with fear exactly, but with anticipation. Elias met her eyes briefly before turning away. Whatever tomorrow held, he had kept it secret, even from her. Which meant the announcement wasn't small, or routine, or forgettable. It was going to shift the ground under all of them. Naomi walked home that night beneath a soft drizzle, Micah sleeping on her shoulder, streetlights glowing like halos in the mist. She felt the world change with every step. Tomorrow would not be ordinary. Not for Maple Street Grill. Not for the staff. Not for her. And especially not for the man who had seen her fall and was now watching her rise. The next morning, the sky over Maple Street was a dull gray, the kind that made the air feel heavy even before a word was spoken. Naomi walked toward the restaurant with Micah's tiny hand in hers, the boy humming a tune under his breath. He had no idea how much weight the day carried. Children rarely do. To them, the world feels soft even when their parents are holding it together with trembling fingers. Naomi knelt, kissed his forehead, and left him at daycare. "Mommy's got a big day," she whispered. When she pushed through the restaurant doors, she froze. Everyone was already there. Servers lined up along the booths. Cooks stood in clusters near the pass window. Jade leaned against the counter, arms crossed but not in hostility, more like anticipation. Even the dishwasher, an older man named Hank, had come in early and was wiping his hands nervously on his apron. In the center of the room stood Elias Carter, tall, still, composed, like the eye of a storm. He glanced toward her, and something softened in his expression. Not favoritism, not pity, but recognition of her effort, her growth, her quiet strength. "Good. You're here," he said gently. Naomi stepped forward, her legs unsteady. Voices around her dropped to whispers. "She's the one he keeps asking about. Do you think he's going to hire some outsider instead?" "No way! Why else call everyone in?" Before Naomi could wonder what the murmurs meant, she saw him. Victor, standing in the back of the room, arms crossed, eyes narrowed. Face stiff and pale like he'd slept in his car. He wasn't supposed to be here, she knew that much. But he had shown up anyway, leaning against the wall like he belonged. Naomi's heart tripped. Jade swore under her breath. Someone else muttered, "What's he doing here?" Elias didn't look at Victor, not yet. He waited for the room to fall silent. Then he cleared his throat. "Thank you all for coming early. Today we make a decision about the future of Maple Street Grill." The words rolled out steady, but the staff looked like they were trying not to breathe too loud. Even the coffee machine stopped sputtering, almost respectfully. Elias continued, pacing slowly. "You've worked hard. You've endured changes. You've seen turnover. And you've kept this place alive. But the truth is," he paused, "your leadership has not been consistent." Several heads turned toward Victor. He smirked, unfazed. Elias raised a hand. "I'm not here to talk about the past. I'm here to talk about the person who changed your present." Naomi's pulse hammered. "Please, not yet. Please don't single me out. But Elias didn't look at her. Not immediately. He looked at the staff. Each one by one. A month ago, he said, this place was falling apart. You were understaffed. Morale was low. Customers were leaving. And when the pressure hit its peak, one person stepped up, not because they were asked to, but because they believed in doing what's right. Someone gasped softly. Another whispered, "It's her. He's talking about her." Naomi wished she could shrink, disappear, cover her face, anything to stop her heart from beating so loudly. Elias finally turned toward her. His voice dropped, warm but clear. "That person is Naomi Brooks." The room didn't erupt. It didn't cheer. It didn't clap. It went still, so quiet Naomi could hear the ticking of the clock above the service window. She felt every pair of eyes lock onto her, some surprised, some approving, some relieved. Victor straightened, pushing off the wall. "Oh, come on," he snarled. "She's a waitress who brought a sick kid into the restaurant. She's a liability, not a leader." A murmur rippled through the staff, sharp, disapproving. Jade looked like she wanted to hurl a pepper grinder at him. Elias didn't flinch. "Victor," he said evenly, "you will not speak over me and my establishment." Victor barked a bitter laugh. "Your establishment? You swoop in for 5 minutes and think you know this place better than someone who built it?" Elias stepped closer, not aggressively, but with the kind of authority that made even the fluorescent lights seem to dim. "You didn't build anything, Victor. You ran this place into the ground. You mistreated staff. You disrespected customers, and you endangered a child with your negligence." Victor blinked. "What child?" Elias didn't break eye contact. "Micah." A collective gasp echoed. Naomi's breath hitched. She hadn't expected that, to be defended so directly, so publicly. Victor's face twisted. "So you're taking her side now? The sob story single mom? This is a joke." The staff tensed. Jade took a step forward, voice low and shaking with anger. "Say one more thing about her. Go ahead." Victor ignored her. His eyes were locked on Elias. "This some charity project? A headline? You think promoting her is going to make you look good?" "No," Elias replied calmly. "I think promoting her is going to make this place run well." Victor opened his mouth again, but Elias raised a hand. "Enough." Silence. "This meeting is not about you," Elias said. "It's about recognizing someone who has carried this place for the past month. Someone who stepped in when others walked out. Someone who saved a coworker from serious injury. Someone who has earned a chance through nothing but hard work and integrity." And then, without flourish, without theatrics, he said the words that froze the room. "I am ready to name the new general manager of Maple Street Grill." Naomi's knees weakened. Her breath locked in her throat. This was the moment. The one that would change everything. She scanned the room, Jade's hopeful eyes, Hank wiping his glasses nervously, the line cooks craning their necks, the servers holding their breath. Even Victor had gone silent. Elias pulled a small envelope from his coat. The room leaned forward, not physically, but emotionally. And Naomi knew her life was about to split into 2 halves, before this moment, and after. The air inside Maple Street Grill felt thick enough to touch, like the entire building was holding its breath along with the staff. Naomi stood rooted to the floor, palms damp, heartbeat trembling through her ribs. She could hear the soft hum of the refrigerator, the distant whistle from the kitchen vent, even the small clink of someone's bracelet as they shifted their weight. Everything else, gone. Elias held the envelope like it weighed more than paper, like it held a life inside it. Maybe it did. He turned to face the staff, but his voice when he spoke felt as though it was meant only for her. "In this envelope," he said quietly, is the name of the person I trust to lead this place. Someone who has shown integrity, resilience, and compassion, not for recognition, not for reward, but because it's who they are. Naomi swallowed, throat thick. Jade whispered, "It's you, Naomi. You know it is." But Naomi didn't know, couldn't know. The years of being overlooked, dismissed, underestimated, they held her back from assuming anything. Elias looked down at the envelope, ran his thumb along the seal, and exhaled. Then, he lifted his gaze, found her across the room, and spoke the words that stopped every sound, every movement, every doubt. The new general manager of Maple Street Grill is Naomi Brooks. The room didn't erupt. No cheers, no claps. It was too shocking, too unexpected. For a long, breathless moment, the restaurant stood frozen in collective disbelief. Then Jade clapped. Once, loud. It broke the spell. The staff joined in, applause swelling like a wave rolling across the floor. Some smiled wide, some wiped tears, some nodded with a respect they hadn't shown anyone in years. Even Hank whistled through his teeth, shaking his head like he'd just witnessed a miracle. Naomi covered her mouth with both hands, eyes stinging. "No, you can't. I'm not." "You are," Elias said, stepping toward her, voice steady with conviction. "You've been doing the job for weeks without the title. All I'm doing is making it official." She let out a little laugh that cracked on the way up. "But I don't have a degree. I don't have management experience." "What you have," Elias replied, "can't be taught in any school." He came closer, lowering his voice. "You lead with kindness. You lift people up. You don't run when things fall apart. You run toward the fire. This place doesn't need a boss. It needs a heart." He paused. "You are that heart." Tears rolled down her cheeks before she could stop them. Elias stepped aside, making room for the staff as they swarmed her. Jade embraced her first, then the line cooks, servers, even the dishwasher hugging her tightly. Someone shouted, "You're gonna run this place right!" Another said, "About time we got someone who actually cares." For the first time in years, Naomi felt like the ground beneath her feet was solid, stable, safe. But Victor was a storm waiting to strike. He pushed forward, voice sharp. "This is absurd! She's unqualified! She's just some waitress with a kid!" The room snapped into silence again. Elias turned on him, calm but dangerous. "She's more qualified than you ever were." Victor scoffed. "You're making a mistake." "No," Elias replied. "The mistake was hiring you." Two security guards stepped in from the hallway. Men Naomi hadn't noticed until now. Elias nodded toward them. "Escort Mr. Hale out, permanently." Victor sputtered. "You can't. This is my livelihood." "No," Elias said again, voice quiet but absolute. "This was your responsibility, and you failed it." The guards took Victor by the arms, guiding him away. He jerked once, twice, but it was useless. He cast one last glare at Naomi. "This isn't over," he spat. But it was. The doors closed behind him with a dull thud. A breath Naomi didn't know she'd been holding slipped out of her chest. Elias turned back to her. His expression softened. "There's more." The room murmured again. Jade gasped. Naomi blinked. Elias reached into his coat a second time, pulling out a small folder. He handed it to her gently. "For Micah," he said. Naomi's hands shook as she opened it. Inside was paperwork, official, stamped, with the logo of St. Mary's Hospital. Her vision blurred. It was a full medical grant. Every appointment, every treatment, Every emergency visit, fully covered, no expiration, no conditions. I noticed the empty medicine bottle in your trash the night I followed you home, Elias said quietly. I didn't want you choosing between your child's health and your job ever again. Naomi pressed a hand to her forehead, tears flowing freely now. The staff around her sniffed, some wiping their eyes, some shaking their heads in disbelief. And one more thing, Elias added, reaching into the folder. It was a small card, blue, embossed with gold lettering. Maple Street Child Development, Scholarship. Recipient, Micah Brooks, full-time coverage for early education and childcare. Naomi nearly dropped it. Her legs buckled, and Elias caught her by the arms, guiding her to a chair. She shook her head over and over, whispering, "Why? Why would you do this?" Elias crouched beside her, meeting her eyes with a calm, steady warmth. Because someone once did it for me. The room stilled again, not tense, not fearful, but reverent. A story unspoken hummed between them, but Elias didn't elaborate. He didn't need to. He stood, straightened his jacket, and addressed the staff once more. "I'm not investing in a restaurant," he said. "I'm investing in people, starting with her." The applause this time was thunderous. Naomi rose slowly, holding the folder to her chest. She looked around at the faces, people she'd worked beside, people who had ignored her, doubted her, quietly supported her, or simply never really seen her. Now they were all looking at her the same way, with hope, and something even more precious, belief. She wiped her cheeks, exhaled shakily, and found her voice. "I won't let you down." Elias smiled softly. "I know." As the staff began to disperse, some to hug her again, some to whisper congratulations, Jade squeezed her shoulder. "You didn't just get promoted," Jade whispered. "You earned a whole new life." And as Naomi stood there, surrounded by people cheering for her, the weight of a future she'd never dared to imagine settling warm and bright in her chest, she believed Jade. For the first time in her life, she truly believed it. And when she returned home that evening, clutching Micah in her arms, a new envelope waited in her mailbox. From the corporate office, she opened it slowly. Inside were 3 words handwritten in elegant ink: Regional Manager Training. Her breath hitched. The world didn't just give her a chance today. It opened a door. And Naomi Brooks, once a woman standing in the rain with no place to go, stepped into tomorrow with her head lifted high, because kindness had finally come full circle. And this time, it came for her. If this story touched your heart, drop a simple 1 in the comments. Just one number to let us know you still believe in kindness, in second chances, and in quiet miracles like Naomi's. And if you want to walk with us through more life-changing stories, real human moments, heartbreak, hope, and redemption, hit subscribe and turn on notifications. Your one comment and one click help us keep these stories alive. We'll see you in the next chapter.